Players end up doing a lot of weird things in video games, oftentimes things that the game creators didn't even plan for. We've talked about this a lot, so today we're on part 3, talking about 10 more things developers didn't think anyone would try in their games. Starting off with number 10, let's talk about Skyrim and the bucket flying. The humble bucket. Is there anything it can't do in these games? I mean, you can put it on a guy's head and rob him blind, and if you do get caught, well, you can actually just fly away to safety. Seriously, it requires some precise positioning to get it to work, but with a little practice, a bucket can actually take you anywhere you want to go. To start your bucket flying journey, first you need like a bucket specifically with a handle. The standard open top buckets you throw on a shopkeeper's head won't work. With one secured, which I got from a farm outside of Solitude, all you have to do here is like place the bucket right side up in a flat open space and then stand on it in a particular spot and then hold the interact button. It's kind of an inexact science getting it to work. But as long as you're standing in the right place and grabbing at the correct spot, then you'll start floating up into the air. You can even control the trajectory of the bucket, if only by a little bit. Yes, it is sort of pointless to do on PC with console commands anyway, but it still works on every version of the game as far as we can tell. I managed to pull this off in the Anniversary Edition, so it's open season for bucket flying, no matter which of the many versions of Skyrim you might own. Next, over at number 9, in the great Dead Space remake, the line gun laser trick. This is one that the developers probably thought some people would try, but they may not have realized just how powerful it would be, because this thing can trivialize the game even on impossible difficulty. So the setup is simple. Just have the line gun and find something you can grab with kinesis, and any throwable object will do. Pick it up to then see how the object lines up, then drop it and use the secondary fire from the line gun on the side facing away from you. Do everything right, which is fairly easy if you got a little patience, and you've got an incredibly powerful 3-beam laser that can decimate almost any enemy you come across. These lasers are strong normally, but they're meant to be stationary, so enemies only tend to touch them for a second, but with kinesis, you can guide them however you want. It'll let you clear out entire rooms and barely use any ammo in the process. Just make sure you put the laser trap on the right side, because this thing hurts you just as much as it hurts them. I'm glad this is in the game because it encourages player experimentation and creativity. We all try weird stuff in games like this, convoluted stuff, and sometimes it really pays off, and that is this. Next, over at number 8, here's another example of a thing that's partially intentional, but clearly broken in a good way. There's a lot of broken stuff you can do with enough time and patience in Borderlands 2, though. But even for this game, Salvador's whole power is just busted beyond belief. Every character you can play as has like a special ability that they can activate after a cooldown. And Salvador's, of course, lets him use 2 weapons at once. That's good and all, but what makes it go from being just normally good to being able to single-handedly kill raid bosses in mere seconds is that it's essentially glitched. Sometimes it's not, just because you get the benefits of holding 2 guns at the same time with all their passive effects at once isn't busted, but the part where certain guns that spawn additional projectiles and the game uses the damage values of the gun in your hand is. Now, if you're holding that gun in your main hand, and it's fine, but if you're holding it in your offhand and in your main hand you've got, say, a rocket launcher which does exponentially more damage per projectile, then that's when things get real busted. You don't even have to fire the rocket, just use a good bullet hose weapon while holding the rocket launcher, and suddenly you've got like an infinite rocket launcher machine gun that does so much damage that you can kill bosses that are meant to be fought by a team of 4 players and take like 10 minutes of constant shooting, you can kill in seconds. It's absolutely ridiculous, but it isn't something you can do just right from the start. You do need the right weapons to really see the benefits of this thing, and that only comes from hours on top of grinding. Still, it's a pretty amazing glitch or exploit when all the stars align and you have everything required to pull it off. It can be really satisfying to just mow people down. Now at number 7, let's talk about Pal World and the sphere jumping. This one is probably unintentional, but maybe the developers left it in just for fun, or they were clueless, I don't know. But this trick is so easy to pull off that it almost feels intentional, but it's just borked, just janky enough to make me think otherwise. So the actual trick here is simple, there's not a lot to it. Just throw a Pal sphere at a critter, and then while it's capturing, climb on top of that sphere. If you manage to nab the Pal, and you're standing on top of the sphere when that happens, then you'll get thrown hundreds of feet into the air. That's really all there is to it. Actually climbing on top of a sphere mid-capture can be a little awkward with the jumping, but if you know exactly where to aim and when to press, then it's not too difficult, and the effect is almost always the same. As a tool for exploring the world more quickly, this is a handy little trick that's easy to exploit, and I know we compare this game to Pokemon, and I really just like to picture Ash Ketchum trying this and get flown across the land, hundreds of feet up in the sky only to suddenly come crashing down. Don't mind me, I guess I have an active imagination. Anyway, next at number 6, if you mostly found the box in MGS3 to be kind of pointless and like a gimmicky item, then think again, because it's actually one of the most powerful pieces of equipment you've got. If you try using it the way it's probably intended, then yeah, it's sort of useless, you'll get spotted a lot, but if you instead just slap it on and start running everywhere, then no one will catch you ever. So for one thing, when you're in the box, you actually move faster up slopes. Normally, Snake's movement is impaired when walking upward, like up steep inclines, but with a box, you can just move just as fast as going up as if you were on flat terrain, making it easier to move at full speed through the rockier terrain and stuff.
What's that box? What's that box?
The other weird benefit to the box is that instead of alerting guards when they see you, they just want to investigate, which makes sense if you were just a completely still box in the middle of the jungle, but it's just a little goofy when you're clearly just a dude with a box on his head, dashing around 2 feet from the guard's face, man. Seriously, the box completely trivializes most stealth sections, and the closer you are, the more effective it is. As long as you're able to like get out of their line of sight pretty quickly, guards will never spot you no matter how obvious you are. You gotta be good, but still, it can be completely and utterly broken if you're slick, in a way that cannot be intentional, because if you try to play it slow and carefully, then you're actually more likely to get caught. That's the whole trick of this thing.
What's this box do?
Next over at number 5, back to Skyrim. You ever get so annoyed at a merchant that you just want to punch them in the face? Well, with this trick, you can. And you should, because it's an easy way to get a merchant to cycle their inventory and refill on gold without having to wait 2 weeks for them to do it. So what you do is you sell stuff to a merchant until they run out of money, and then quick save, and then punch them in the head.
What do you think you're doing? Never should have come here.
So they'll aggro on you, but don't worry about it. Just reload your save, and then boom, the merchant is back to normal and with a fully restocked inventory, so you can just continue to sell stuff to them. So why does this work? Well, the thing with Skyrim is that when you load a game, it resets a bunch of game variables so that it doesn't have to keep track of absolutely everything going on. They cut a few corners here, so when you load a game, it'll reset the merchant's hostility and also their inventory too. I guess the game just like straight up resets everything about an NPC when it has to, I guess. So the important thing to keep in mind here is to save before the punch. Don't be like a goof like us and save after. It kind of defeats the point of the whole thing. Even if sometimes they still reset and become non-aggressive, their inventories don't reset. How that works, I have no idea. It's just the inner workings of Skyrim. It's a mess. Now Now at number 4, here's another handy way to abuse the way a game resets the state of the world. If your car gets smashed up in GTA 5, instead of wasting your time heading all the way to a garage to fix it, just switch to a different character, then switch back, and hey, presto, it's suddenly back to normal. Okay, look, it's not always perfect. Sometimes the windows are still blown out, but everything else is fixed. Seriously, that's all you have to do. Just be sure to fully transition, where you have control of a new character fully before then swapping back again. And don't wait too long either, because your original guy might just reappear with a completely different car. This is another one of those things where developers obviously knew about it. This is an intentional decision probably on their part, not to keep the state of each character's car in memory. They just probably hope that nobody would abuse it too much. It's not that powerful, all said. I mean, you can only swap characters freely in the open world, so during missions this sort of thing won't work, so it's limited. But still, if you wreck up a car that you really like, then this is a fast and easy way to instantly fix it. In the early days of GTA, cars were precious, and you couldn't get them this easily fixed. So if you've only played GTA 5, this doesn't seem like a big deal, but if you've been playing for a long time, you know this is a nice, fun little exploit. Now at number 3, there's some crazy stuff people have managed to pull off with the Chalice dungeons in Bloodborne, specifically with the Chalice glyph system, which lets players generate a random seed by just inputting text. So the dungeons are randomly generated, but through some quirk of the programming, people have actually been able to do things like access parts of the game you were never meant to see, and find enemies that were dummied out of the original game. It's pretty wild that they essentially gave people the tool to access these game files inside of the game itself. How it works is far too complex for us to fully understand or describe, but it's still fascinating. Cut bosses and secret monsters are nice enough, but what people want are exploits here, and this is the ultimate Bloodborne exploit. A certain Chalice dungeon that lets you farm tons of blood echoes, which is the game's version of souls, so money and experience all rolled into one, without having to do anything. The glyph to access this particular dungeon is CUMMMFPK, and the jokes write themselves. So you enter the dungeon, you open the door, you walk forward a few steps, and suddenly you're flush with echoes. Now just leave, do it again and again and again and again until you're satisfied and you got everything you need. Buy up all the healing items you could ever need, or get endgame levels right at the start of the game. Do whatever. It's seriously that easy. How the dungeon works is that there's a hunter NPC that spawns under a pendulum trap. The hunter is so far away from the player that they have no animations, but their hitbox still works, so they just stand there and are killed by the trap every time. Because they're a high-level hunter, they drop tons of blood echoes. The trick here is to just hang around the entrance, and if you move forward too quickly, then the hunter will be in range and actively avoid the trap. So just stay in the starting area, and you'll get tons of blood echoes for doing literally nothing. It's awesome. Now down at number 2, if you've messed around in Bethesda games enough, you probably are aware how item ID codes work. You type in the code to get the item. Stardew Valley draws items from its virtual inventory in a similar way, although there's a pretty bizarre little exploit you could take advantage of to get some of the rarest items in the game without resorting to full-blown cheating to do it. For some reason, if you name something after an item code in brackets, then whenever someone says that name, then the item spawns in your inventory. Players often take advantage of this by naming their cows and chickens after certain items, but bizarrely enough, it even works if you name your main character after an item. So, if you want to get rare stuff like ancient fruit or prismatic shards, just name your guy the item code for that thing in brackets, and whenever someone says your name, which is pretty frequent, then it'll cause one of those items to just appear in your inventory. Just find someone in town who will always say your name, and you'll get an infinite supply of whatever that item was that you need. It's such a weird little trick that the developer recognized, but they were kind enough to just leave it in. Seriously, if you're so desperate for items that you're naming your main guy, brackets 74, close brackets, then, they might as well just let it happen. Now finally, down at number 1, we need to talk about The Simpsons Hit and Run's Carl Skip. I'm gonna be honest here, I just like saying the Carl Skip. The Simpsons Hit and Run is just a game full of fun little exploits on a sliding scale of helpfulness. This one is really only going to be useful for speedrunners, but it's such a goofy little thing that the developers clearly did not anticipate. So on mission 7 of chapter 1, you have to go and talk to Carl in front of the nuclear power plant. The mission he gives you is simple. Just drive from the parking lot to Mr. Burns' house.
Hey, Homer. You look like you're having one of your trademark adventures.
Danger! Mr. Burns!
It's a long race that pretty much forces you to go in a full circle, like around the entire area, but there's a way to give yourself a little shortcut. See, when the mission starts, the doors to the power plant are closed, so you can't just go that way. But there's a way to get back there. Instead of talking to Carl in the parking lot, just take your car and nudge him inside the plant, and then talk to him in there. During the cutscene, it'll still look like you're talking in the parking lot, but then when the mission starts, you'll be inside, behind the locked doors. So now you can drive directly from here to Mr. Burns' house in a fraction of the time. It's really just a brilliantly simple trick, man. You want to get behind the doors? Then just push them past and then start the mission there instead. That it even works is awesome. Most games would just lock you into a starting point no matter where you actually engage the mission. So sure, the Carl Skip is nice, but then there's the Carl Skip Skip, which actually lets you completely bypass the bypass. It's a skip for a skip. And I'm not making this up, it's real, look it up. But maybe we'll talk about that more next time, because those are 10 more things that developers didn't think anyone would try in their games. Like I said, there are plenty of other examples, so we'd love to hear yours in the comments. If you got any weird stories for us, we'd love to hear it. But if you like this video and you like just talking game stuff with us every day, clicking the like button helps us out. We really appreciate that. But as always, thanks for watching, and we'll see you guys next time.